Hi, Dolphins. This is Lisa Sewell, Alumni Mentorship Coordinator and Career Counselor at CSU Channel Islands. Today, we're going to be talking about interviewing with confidence. So chances are you've already interviewed for a position in the past, maybe a part-time job, student assistant position on campus, or maybe a full-time opportunity. So think back to those past interviews and reflect on what went well, and maybe some areas where you can improve. And today we're going to be giving you tips and strategies so that you can go into your next interview feeling confident. So there's a few rules to keep in mind when you're preparing for an interview. And sometimes it's helpful to think of the same rules that you would use for going on a date as you would for prepping for an interview. So first, you want to go into an interview being confident. So our translation of that is you don't want to appear desperate in the interview process. So you want to get out of a mindset of feeling like you'll take any job or any rate of pay. You just need something. Instead, you want to go into the interview being sure of the value that you have to offer in that particular role and to the company. And if this is something that you struggle with, it might be helpful to meet with a career counselor, and we can really help you talk through previous experiences, previous projects, or coursework that you've done, and really help you get comfortable and confident speaking about who you are and what you have to bring to the table. Next, you want to be genuinely interested in the organization and the position that you've applied to. So when you are looking for opportunities, be a little bit picky. Choose industries and companies and roles that you're actually excited to pursue. So during the interview process, you can genuinely show that you really are interested in who they are and what they do. Also, you want to make sure you're compatible during the interview process. So you've probably heard the saying, you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. So this is a chance to see, what is the interview process like? How are you treated by the recruiters or by the people that are interviewing you on the day of? Are they respectful? Do you sense that everybody gets along? Maybe there's a sense of humor. And then on the opposite side, perhaps you feel like you weren't treated with respect. So really pay attention throughout the process to how you're feeling and really thinking, is this the kind of place that I'd like to be long term? Next, you don't want to badmouth your exes, which is just like it sounds. In an interview, you never want to speak poorly about a past company, a past supervisor, or past coworkers, even if really it wasn't a good situation and it wasn't your fault at all. In an interview, it's the first impression that you're making. And anytime you speak negatively, it usually throws up a red flag and paints you in a negative way, even if, again, it wasn't something that was your fault. So during the interview, try not to say anything negative about past companies or colleagues. Also, while you do want to be confident, you want to keep your ego in check. So that means you want to show humility and self-awareness. So when they ask for examples of projects or accomplishments that you've had, you want to speak confidently about your contributions, but you never want to appear arrogant. So if you were part of a team, you want to give credit to others where they were helpful, and just demonstrate that you have an awareness of areas where you could improve or could grow. Also, you want to make sure to ask questions. So during the interview, in the beginning, they're going to obviously be driving the conversation, but typically at the end, there's going to be a chance for you to ask questions as well and get to know your interviewers. So we'll talk a bit about this a little bit later and give you some ideas of questions that you can ask. And then finally, you want to dress to impress. So during the interview process, again, you're making this first impression. Perhaps it's in a video call or it could be in person. So you want to make sure you're dressed confidently and feeling really good about yourself. So we've talked a lot about being confident in the interview, and one of the main things that is important for you to be able to speak to articulately is your top strengths. So think about that right now. Is that something that you feel confident that you could answer in this moment? So if I said, what are your top 3 strengths? Could you tell me right now? If you feel like you're not quite sure what they are, take some time to do some self-reflection. One exercise that's sometimes helpful is to text a friend or a family member, maybe a partner or a colleague. So think of somebody who knows you really well and just ask them, say, what do you think are my top 3 strengths? You might get some responses back that surprise you, or you could get answers back that really just kind of reaffirm what you already knew about yourself. So do this maybe with a couple different people so that you can start to think about your top strengths and then start coming up with good stories or examples to demonstrate those strengths. And we'll talk more about that in a second. All right, so we talked about dressing to impress. When it comes to what to wear for an interview, it really depends on you and it depends on the organization and the industry that you're looking to work in. So, as a rule of thumb, you want to dress more nicely than you would if you were going out for a casual, day at the park or going grocery shopping. You want to put some effort into how you're presenting yourself. But as far as what's appropriate and what you're going to feel confident in, is going to be different for everyone. So sometimes it's helpful to check out the social media pages for the company to see what employees typically wear. On their website, they might have videos or photos that could give you an idea. And then also when you're scheduling the interview process, you could ask maybe the recruiter or whoever you're in touch with that's scheduling the interview, if they have any tips or advice on what would be appropriate attire for the interview process. Okay, so as you're preparing, there's a few things that you want to do ahead of time. So the first thing that you'll want to do is review the job description very closely. So as you're going through the job search, what I like to recommend to people is to actually save a copy of that job description somewhere on your computer. You could print it out, you could save it on your desktop, but sometimes when you apply to positions, between the time that you've applied and the time that you interview, they might remove that job description from their website. So it's important to have, a digital or a hard copy version of the job description so you can go back to it and reference it when you're prepping for your interview. So typically the job description is going to list out the required skills or experience or knowledge that they're looking for. So it's really, like a cheat sheet for you to pay attention to what are the most important things that they're going to probably be basing their questions on during the interview. So that document's going to be very helpful to you as you prepare. Also, you want to start thinking about maybe 3 to 4 questions that you might want to ask the interviewer. Again, I'll give you some examples of that towards the end. If you are doing an in-person interview, you might want to bring some hard copies of your resume and then also your list of references, professional references. And then, of course, you need to research the organization because you're going to get questions about why you want to work for them or what do you know about our company. So how do you do that? Of course, at a minimum, you're going to visit the company's website. You want to check out their About Us section, maybe review their careers page and see, if there's any particular awards or resources that they provide to employees. Something that they've highlighted that you might want to bring up during the interview. Glassdoor.com is another website that's really useful when you're preparing for interviews. It's a site where current and previous employees basically provide ratings of the company. So they list out pros and cons of working there. And it's a nice way for you to be able to see, what are some common trends or things that people really enjoyed about working there. And that's something that you could potentially bring up as well. Check out if there's any news articles or press releases. You can follow company social media accounts to see if there's any updates or news that you should be aware of. On LinkedIn, you can follow the company page, and then that means anytime they post something, it'll show up in your feed. A great way to learn more about a company and then to get that inside kind of recommendation or referral is to do informational interviews with people who are currently working there, preferably in the department that you'd like to be in. And then finally, talk to faculty or classmates or alumni from Channel Islands who might have connections to that company as well. All right, so the next step as you're preparing for your interview is to have specific examples or what we call car stories prepared so that when you do get questions like, tell me about a time when, or give me an example of, you're ready with a story. So those are called behavioral interview questions. And that's one of the most common types of questions that are asked in an interview. So for example, the hiring manager might say, give me an example of a time you worked on a team. Or can you share a story about a time you overcame a challenge? And while there's no way to prepare for exactly, what questions are going to be asked, there is a really good strategy of coming up with a set number of car stories so that kind of no matter what you're asked, you have an example to share to illustrate your point. So CAR stands for context, action, and result. So context is basically the backstory. So you want to describe what was the situation, what was happening, or maybe what was the problem. And then for action, you want to talk about what did you do to address that problem? How did you solve it? What steps did you take? What was your thought process? And then finally, you want to share the result. So you want to talk about what happened. So what changed or improved afterwards? What kind of congratulations or feedback or success did you get after taking that particular action? So use this method to come up with some car stories to talk about your strengths. And I want to give you a moment right now actually to start brainstorming. So using the CAR formula, I want you to come up with at least one story or example for each of your top 3 strengths. So take some time, you can pause the video, and remember to use the method. So context, action, result. Okay, so after you've come up with your car stories, I also want you to start thinking about during the interview process, what are some things to keep in mind so that you make a strong first impression? So if you are meeting in person, it's important to have a good firm handshake. If you're meeting in person or doing a video chat, you want to try to maintain good eye contact, which means if you're on a Zoom call, you want to be making eye contact with the camera. And then, of course, you want to show enthusiasm. So try to smile, to show basically that that you're excited about this opportunity and to be speaking with them. Okay, some tips to keep in mind. So during the interview, you want to be a little bit early. So whether it's in person or for a video chat, you never want to arrive late to an interview. So always give yourself a little bit of buffer time if you have to drive or if you have to set up your laptop. Make sure that you're always a few minutes early just in case. The next one is a tricky one. So don't talk too quickly. This is a challenging one, especially when you're nervous. We've all been there during an interview. It's a nerve-wracking experience. So trying to keep from talking too quickly can be a challenge, but you want to make sure that all of the wonderful things that you have to say are going to be heard. As far as how long to speak when you're answering each question, a general rule of thumb would be to keep your answers under 2 minutes. So you want to be clear, you want to be concise. Anything longer than 2 minutes, usually you start to lose the listener. So try to be brief. Like we were talking about with car stories, you want to take the time to come up with concrete examples of relevant experience. So basically, like I was saying earlier, review that job description. I like to go through it with a pen or a highlighter and mark up, again, the main skills, the main experience. Maybe there's technology that they're hoping that you'll know. For each of those things that they've listed in there that they want, that you have exposure to. So maybe you've done it in a past job. Maybe you were a volunteer, in a club and you were able to gain some of that experience. Maybe you did it in class. Whatever it might be, start coming up with specific examples to demonstrate that experience. And where appropriate, you can create a car story. During an interview, generally you want to keep it professional, which means you don't want to share overly personal information. And that's going to look different for everybody. So depending on the industry that you're in and depending on the role, some people might want to share more about their personal lives than others. So there isn't a right or wrong, but you do want to be aware that depending on what you share, some information can be used to discriminate against you as a candidate. So you want to be aware of that possibility and decide how much information are you willing to share with the recruiter. So if you do have questions about that, you're always welcome to contact a career counselor. We're happy to chat with you about your options and you even do a mock interview to help you think about how you'd like to handle it. Also, of course, during the interview, you want to be prepared to talk about why you're interested in that particular company. So this is where having done your research is going to be really critical. If they do ask you, why do you want to work for us? You don't want to say things like, well, the pay is really good, or it's close to my house, so I don't have to commute very far. Those things might be true. I've heard other people say that the benefits are great. All of those things are probably true. But You want to go deeper than that. You need to go beyond those surface level perks of proximity or benefits or pay. There needs to be something about the organization, maybe the work that they're doing, the population that they serve, maybe their mission or their values, or how they operate their business. Something about it, like we were talking about before, that you're genuinely interested in or excited about is really what you need to discuss in your interview so that you can stand out. And then finally, you want to thank the interviewers. So if you're in person, you can ask for a business card. If you're doing the interview virtually, you can always request contact information for each of the interviewers that you met with from the person who is setting up the interview with you. And most importantly, during the interview, stay positive. So again, this is really the first chance that they're meeting you. So they've read your resume and your cover letter. They saw something that they liked. So this is really their chance for them to partly see, do you live up to the hype? So are you as capable and knowledgeable as you said on your documents? But also, are you likable? Are you enthusiastic? Are you friendly? They just want to see, are you going to be a good fit on our team? So staying positive is always a good way to make it a good impression. All right. So what are some potential questions that you'll want to be ready to answer? Like I said, there's no way to know every possible question that you could be getting, but there's some common ones. So often interviews will start with some version of, tell me about yourself. And I'll share in a moment how to answer that question. Next, you want to be ready to talk about, why do you want to work for our company? Usually the next one, so what is your greatest achievement, could be like, what are your top strengths, or, tell us about a project that you're really proud of. So start thinking about, again, some car stories to demonstrate your successes. The next question is, tell me about a challenge or conflict you faced at work and how you dealt with it. So this could be asked in a variety of ways. They could ask about a difficult customer, a difficult coworker. They just want to see if you're thrown a curveball or a challenge, how do you deal with it? And they want to hear, again, past successes of how you've overcome that challenge. This next question you might not get, but it's, what do you think we could do better or differently? So this is another version of essentially, you have to have researched the company pretty well to be able to give them feedback on where they can improve. So you want to tread lightly, you want to be respectful, but if you have ideas for things that could be done differently and they're asking this question, they want to know, and they want to see how well do you understand where they are currently and where are they trying to go. So this question is going to require you to have done some good research on the company. And then, like I said, at the end of the interview, you might get the opportunity to ask questions. So they'll say, do you have any questions for us? And then you want to be ready. So before I get into questions you can ask, I want to talk a little bit about how to answer that first question, tell me about yourself. So when we do mock interviews, I've seen a lot of students and alumni kind of handle this question by going personal. So they'll say, I'm from Ventura County. I really love surfing. I went to high school, at Cam High. And then I decided to go to Channel Islands because it was close to home. I studied psychology. And yeah, now I'm here and I'm excited about this job. And so there really isn't anything in there that's specific to the role or to the company. So instead of talking about kind of your personal journey, there's kind of like three parts you want to cover. So the first would be your education. So you'd want to mention where you went to school, what degree you got, maybe what year you graduated. And then next, you want to share any relevant experience you have to that job. So if you've held a past position or an internship, maybe you volunteered in a similar company or industry. And then, of course, class projects. So any like capstone or, comprehensive assignments you've done, any of that could be used as examples to share relevant experience. And then finally, any specific skills or strengths that make you a great fit for the job. And then you would want to wrap up your answer basically by saying why you're excited about this particular role. And I know it sounds like a lot, but this is something you would want to, again, try to answer within under 2 minutes. So this is a great one to practice during a mock interview. Okay, so what questions should you be prepared to ask at the end? This is just a sample of some that you can pick from. Really, the important thing is that you're asking questions that you actually want answered. Be careful not to ask questions that are answered somewhere in maybe the job description or on the company's website. So try to really ask questions that you can't find anywhere else. You can't find the answers to, and that give you a chance to get to know your interviewers a little bit better. So, can you tell me about the history of this position? That's a question I like because it gives you a little sense of the background. Is it a new role? Is it something, that's been around since the beginning of the company and they've had a lot of different people in that position? The next question about favorite work event or tradition. This is a nice one just to give you a sense of maybe the more like the culture of the company. So kind of, is there a lot of camaraderie? Do they do a lot of events together as employees? So it just kind of gives you a little bit of insight. How will you measure the success of the person in this position? That's a helpful one to know, like what kind of things should you be taking into consideration when you start this job. So how are you going to be evaluated, and how will you know if you're kind of meeting the mark that they've set for you? So another version of that would be like, what are you hoping this person will accomplish in their first 6 months and in their first year? So this allows them to kind of really lay out for you what are the expectations. The next question, are there opportunities for professional development? This shows that you're looking to grow. So if it's really important to you to keep learning and keep building your skills, this could be a good one to ask. The next question, what strategies and plans does your company have to increase diversity in your workplace? I think this is a great one, just to kind of really see what employers are doing. I think sometimes companies will speak to diversity and inclusion on their websites, but if you can't really see any specifics and you want to know more, you can ask them. And then this really puts them on the spot to be able to give you clear evidence of what they've done in this particular area. What do you like best about working for this company? Again, this is a nice one to kind of give you some insight. If everybody's excited to talk about the organization and what they love, that's a good sign. If everybody in the interview really struggles to say what they like about this company, or they don't seem very positive, that could be a red flag for you to take into consideration. The next question is about the team you'd be working with. So this could be helpful for you to learn a little bit more about who you'll be, collaborating with day to day. This next question I really like. So it says, thinking back to people you've seen do this work previously, what differentiated the ones who were good from the ones who were really great? So this gives you some good insight into what does the company value most. So they've had good employees, but they've had phenomenal employees. So those top performers, they will share with you, they did X, Y, and Z. So as you're listening to that answer, you can think, how well does that describe you? Is that something that have they mentioned things where you're like, yes, that's what I want to focus on. I'm excited. Yeah, I'm going to be a perfect fit. Or they might mention a few things where you're like, I don't know if this is the job for me, which is okay, because part of this process is you evaluating whether or not it's a fit for you. So I think that's a really, really strong question to ask. And then at the very end, after you've asked your other questions, you always want to end on what are the next steps in the interview process? And this gives you a chance to get a little bit of clarity around when you might hear back, or if there's going to be a second round of interviews that you have to go through. So this is a nice one just to kind of give you some, like I said, clarity around what's going to happen after you leave the interview. Okay, so after your interview, of course, you want to say thank you. So within 24 hours of your interview, it's probably a good idea to send an email to everybody you interviewed with. So if it was just one person, you'll just message that one individual. If you met with a panel, you're going to want to send separate emails to each one of the people that were on your panel. Thank you emails can be brief, but you do want to be specific. So if there was something that you discussed during the interview that you want to reiterate, you can include it in there. Also, maybe you forgot to say something that you think is important. So you can include that in your thank you email. And then following the interview, take a little break and give yourself a chance to evaluate how you did. So were there questions that you feel like you really nailed? And then were there some questions that maybe were pretty hard for you? So evaluate how you did, think about, how you can improve for the future. And then At this point, you want to pay attention to the follow-up. So if you don't hear back from the employer, unless they told you it was going to be a few weeks before you hear back, after one full business week is completely okay and encouraged for you to send a follow-up email and to let them know, thank them again for the opportunity to interview, let them know that you're still interested, and say, if there's any additional information you need from me, please let me know. So you're not sending an email saying, I haven't heard back. What's going on? When am I going to know? Because you don't want them to feel rushed. This process can take some time, but it's nice for you to kind of still be top of mind and just let them know again that it was a good experience. They're excited about the job and to be in touch if they need anything else. Okay. And then lastly, there is a feature on LinkedIn with some great common interview questions where you can watch videos of people answering the questions. It's a really, really good opportunity to just do some practice. And then, like I said, of course, you can do a mock interview with our career counselors. So don't hesitate to reach out. We are available virtually. And so you can contact us via phone or email and schedule an appointment. We're available via Calendly. So I hope this was helpful to you in building your confidence for your next interview. And we wish you the best of luck. All right. Have a great day, Dolphins.